Nice. Thank you very much for joining us today. Absolute pleasure. We have been working with the wonderful Hotovo, our development partners, for a couple of years now. We used to be their customer, and we learned a lot working with them in that relationship. And it went so well that we've actually formed a partnership and started our own development house together. We have software teams now in Poland, Slovakia, and Australia. And we work with customer support teams in America, the United States, and Poland, and we have customers all around the world. So we thought this would be a good opportunity to share some of the things we've learned working with distributed teams, and hopefully find it useful. I'd also like to very much introduce Sylvia and Hotovo and all the wonderful things they do there. Sylvia, do you want to shamelessly self-promote Hotovo at this point?
Well, you already did. But for those who don't know Hotovo, we are located in Košice in Slovakia, and we specialize on custom software development in Java, JS, and .NET as the main technologies. But we have also different offices in London as well. Actually, today the stage is yours, Chris and Tom. So you are in charge now.
Lovely. To avoid a live webinar panic, we have pre-recorded, although I've mostly got the same t-shirt and camera angle going on. So anyway, without further ado, take it away, Sylvia. Thank you. Hi guys, I'm Chris from the Old Street Apps growth team, and this is Tom.
Hi there, I work in the Old Street support and product management team.
So today we're going to talk about a topic that's growing rapidly in popularity. Everyone's talking about distributed teams and working remotely. Some people were doing it before it became fashionable. So I've been going through the advice on this more from a growth and support perspective. Tom's obviously been managing developers in various countries around the world. So I'm just going to share a few pointers and guidelines going through the psychology, the simplicity and the operations of it. We're going to talk about how you can have a system that gets your support, growth, sales teams working together with your customers so that all of that information is useful in one place and isn't distracting everyone with irrelevant, redundant information.
Yeah, sounds good. And what I like about this is that it's not going to be this long thought out, scalable, how will this work at 10,000 users? It's for small teams, small agile teams that want to get started today. What could you do to maybe automate your support process a bit more? How you get people working together, how you could integrate Slack into your processes. It's not one big monolithic, here's what you do. It's just a bunch of ideas on how you could improve your processes right now.
Yeah, and I think that's key because handled well, your customers are your greatest asset. They give you really good feature suggestions. They tell you what is the blocker to them buying something, right? Which is perfect for a sales team to know. And if they're happy, they will become a perfect marketing asset as well. Tragically, often support becomes neglected, ignored, and treated as a frustration and a cost to be minimized even. So we're going to be sharing some things that work for us, and hopefully you can apply them. We're going to be talking briefly about things you can do with Jira Service Desk, Slack, and what you can automate and what you shouldn't. So we'll go over some suggestions there. The best resources, and we'll provide links afterwards below, will be from the Google Playbook and from the Trello Playbook. Those are two organizations that have done proper meta studies looking at a lot of organizations that work remotely, and I'd really recommend you reading both of those. The main thing I've learned from this experience working remotely with different teams in different places is to avoid context switching at all costs. It is an absolute nightmare, and although Slack will bill itself as a productivity tool, mismanaged, we all know how frustrating and distracting it can be. So I think the main thing I'd say just quickly on the psychology of working with remote teams is understand that you are messaging someone at your convenience, and it behooves you to completely expect them to reply at their convenience. And that's really important because when you're working in an office with someone, there are all these queues we have for when they might be available to us and when they're not. So if you're walking through an office and you see someone hunched over their keyboard, furiously typing, brow furrowed, headphones on, you would inherently know that's not a good time to come tap them on the shoulder and ask if they've got a minute. You already know the answer to that question. However, you have none of those cues when you're working, when you're messaging someone on Slack. That doesn't mean don't message them, of course. What it means is you need to have a culture where it is understood as a ground rule that people will reply to you when they have time, and there's never an expectation, even if the CEO herself messages you, that you have to drop everything and reply to it. And that just needs to be communicated clearly. Although it's often clear for people at the top, it needs to be told to your new hires, like, don't ever think that you have to reply. There's no SLA on replying to the CEO. Unfortunately, just because of how unproductive context switching makes everyone, the CEO is just going to have to be patient sometimes. That's just the price of trying to get stuff done without having to look at Slack every 5 minutes.
Definitely. And you'll be able to tell Chris's background is a psychology degree, so he'll get right into the details of the human nature behind it and why people think like that. But don't worry, there will be some technical demos as well. We're going to show you exactly how this works in Jira, so it won't just be theory, it'll be practical as well.
I think a technical people would appreciate being interrupted less while they're developing there.
I agree, yeah.
That wasn't a dig at you, by the way, Tom. You're free to interrupt me as much as you want. So, I'd say another thing we've really learned about successfully managing support teams is the understanding that support isn't just one department's job. It's not something to be outsourced and siloed. And okay, this is a benefit of being a small team, but we've learned so much from the interaction of the philosophy that everyone does support. And Tom will talk to what this means from a development end, but having our salespeople at the front of the coalface understanding why they like the app, what they're not sure about, what features they'd like to see, means that they have a really good understanding of our customers and their needs. Also understanding of the roadmap, and so they can help be like, yeah, that's being released this month, so let's extend your evaluation so you can see those features. So getting people to collaborate on that front and understanding that support is a job for everyone makes for a really productive collaborative environment. Tom, do you want to share some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so definitely, I think that Chris has mentioned this a few times before, this idea of DevOps for sales and marketing and how you can integrate teams together. So DevOps and these integrated agile teams seem to make sense when it's all about how we can deploy better and how we can have faster feedback loops. But you really need the customers to be involved in that as well. So anyone at any level can interact with support and should be seen as part of the support team. It shouldn't be, as Chris said, just some quiet room in the back where people get shouted at by the customers, because that tends to be what support's seen as. Instead, it's a really productive way to be able to listen to the customers and get great ideas. If people feel like you listen and you as a company actually take on that feedback. And importantly as well, we're going to show you have a public roadmap so people can see what you're intending to do. If you're completely opaque and they can't see any future for what you're developing, or if their ideas ever make it anywhere, then that can be very frustrating. So Atlassian do this, and they do this very well. They have their Jack, their Jira, Atlassian.com, and you can see tickets that have been open for 15 years with people still shouting. And on the one hand, that can be difficult for people saying that, well, things never get fixed. But the fact that Atlassian actually own up to what they are and aren't doing, is something.
What is a priority, what isn't?
Yeah, it at least gives people visibility. You can complain all you want, but at least you have something to complain about. So yeah, it's not always ideal, but that's a good approach.
Yeah, indeed. I think it'd be useful for us to kind of go through an example and show. So shall I raise a ticket now, Tom?
Yeah, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to show you our Old Street support dashboard. And this is where I work inside of Jira and have the support tickets open. So I'm going to share my screen now. And there you go. So this is our Old Street support dashboard. And a lot of the gadgets you see here are from Custom Charts, one of our apps. And it's useful because I can see support tickets as they come in. So Chris is going to raise one now. We can see here the different statuses on the right. And Chris, if you let me know when you've raised it, we'll go through the full process of how we deal with it, how we have a conversation with the customer, what automation we use, everything.
Cool. So I'm just going to raise a ticket asking about in-app training material.
Mm-hmm.
No need to share my screen because you'll just see it shortly afterwards, right?
Yeah, that's fine. As soon as you raise it, we'll see it come up here. Okay. So looking at the dashboard, we can see all the different statuses of all the different tickets, which is very useful. So before Chris even raises his, we can see here's a bunch of our apps that we have here, and we can see all the different statuses of any tickets that are currently open. And these are all linked to this simple search gadget. So you can see when we click search, they'll all refresh with the latest data. So if we know we want to find a ticket, for example, related to some administration, we can click search, and there we can find the 8 issues, and it's refreshed all the different charts. We can see, okay, great. So we know that the one that we were looking for was for custom Jira charts for Confluence. That's waiting for customer. Okay.
I've raised my ticket now, if you want to.
Cool. So if we clear that search and refresh it now, we can see a ticket's just come up in triage. So let me just pull this up on another screen a second, just to make sure it's the right ticket. It's always fun doing it on live, production instances. So you have to be careful not to actually show any customer data. So let me just move this off for you a sec. Cool. Okay, there we go. So we've got our one ticket that Chris just raised. So we're going to click on that now, and we can click on it here on the chart. And there you go. So Chris has raised a ticket, and we can jump straight to that and see what he's raised. So he's asking for marketing custom charts. Do they have any training material, ideally in app? And this is something that we have thought about. And I work with the developers, and I know that we've been talking about this in the last week. And there's actually a ticket on the backlog for us to develop. So let me just check the ticket for that. Cool. So what we're going to do now is reply to Chris, just to start with. So we can do it there, or we can go directly waiting for customer and add a comment here saying, how many users So I want to know how many users, because it'll give me an idea of what level of training he's hoping for. If it's just for a few administrators, that'll just give me a better idea. So we can have this conversation, and there you go, it's gone waiting for customer, and then if Chris replies from the email he gets, we'll see what happens next. And what is going to happen, or what's hopefully going to happen when Chris does that, is that we have some project automation set up, and if we jump over here, you can see a bunch of these project automation rules, and this is on Jira Cloud, so it's using the now built-in automation for Jira. And if we look, transition to triage on customer comment. So this is a rule that I like, because it's very easy on Jira Service S to get completely lost in the weeds of, okay, well, that ticket's waiting for customer, but then the customer replied, or it's with dev, but the customer replied, and you don't know where anything's happening. Whereas if everything moves back to in triage when it gets commented, effectively everything has to be triaged again. If a customer made a comment, the support team, someone should want to read that comment. Even if it's just saying thank you, that's great, it should still be looked at. So what's going to happen is when the issue is commented, if the initiator is a customer, which in this case Chris is, the status is not already in triage, then this is the Slack integration. So what it's going to do is send a message to the Slack channel using this API, this webhook, and it's going to use these messages. So it's going to use data from the ticket. So it's going to have the summary, the name of the app that was referenced, the hosting, and how many users if this data was filled in on the ticket. So it gives you really, really nice inline useful information. Okay, so if we jump back here, Chris may have commented. Not yet. Chris, have you replied to email?
I did, yes.
That's fine. So if you replied to an email, so there's two ways to reply. If you replied on email, then what's going to happen is that's going to take a minute to be processed by the mail handler, and then it will come through. If he did it in the portal, you'd be able to see the message straight away. So if we jump back to the support dashboard again, we can see that if we refresh this, it's now gone back to triage, so we can see it again. No? Okay, we'll wait for that mail to get handled, but we'll see that conversation come through. So the project automation is really useful, particularly for the Slack messages, because it gives you visibility. As Chris was saying before, Slack messages can be a bit overwhelming if they come through and you have to jump on them, but this is more about context. And what's nice about using automation for Jira is that if you wanted to make these rules a bit more granular, so if you had specific teams for different apps and you had a custom charts team and a sketch team for our 2 different apps, you could actually funnel this rule based on the app name to different Slack channels. So it gives you the ability to make sure it goes to exactly the right person. You could have rules that say, if this app is for over 1,000 users, then message the sales team channel as well. And this is a nice way you can use Slack as a productivity tool to integrate everything together and say, actually get the relevant people involved at the right time and not just have to have manual processing of every ticket. Requires people to actually fill it in correctly, but sometimes it does happen, and sometimes people will give you helpful data. So let's see if this has come through or not yet. There you go. So Chris, you can see now he's replied with a bunch of data, which is useful. Okay, so he's given us 10,000. There you go. So we know this is definitely worth looking at. So what we're going to do now is move it into development. So we're going to say, okay, so we reply to the customer using that, and we're going to move this to with dev. So now the customer can see that this support ticket is now being worked on, but this support ticket isn't visible to anyone else. It's only contained here. So let's talk about the next step of how do we add this to a public roadmap. So if we jump across to here, this is the custom charts. This is our documentation page, and it has a public roadmap which is linked to our public tracker. And I'll explain how this all links together in a second. I'll just show you it to start with. So here we can see some issues in our Jira, and we can see issues that we've recently completed. And this is all public data, so anyone who says what's happening with your app, what any bugs have been raised, there's a bug tracker as well. Can we see visibility of that? It just gives them a bit more confidence that the app's being actively developed and you have some idea of what you're doing next. So here you can see what's currently in development, and here's our backlog. So I can see, okay, there's nothing about in-app documentation on the backlog at the moment. So let's pull that up. So what we're going to do is jump to trackers. This is me as an agent. I know that this is linked to a support ticket, so I'm going to create this now. So I'm going to create it in the tracker project, and it's a new feature that Chris has asked for. So I'm going to call it improved onboarding for new users, and it's going to be for all platforms, and in this case I use components to map to the platform, so we know that it's actually going to be released for custom charts everywhere, which is great.
Is that on data center as well, Tom?
Yeah, so it's on all platforms. Server and data center are the same app as far as
Okay.
custom charts are concerned, so it's the same thing. And then we're going to jump and stick an image, because we have this from the development project. We're going to stick an image on there as well. What's nice about this is that I've added some validation on this. So if we try and click create here, you can see there's an error. And you can't actually create this without linking it to a development issue. So it means that just a bit of a check to say, well, don't put something on the public tracker if it's not actually linked to anything, because that's just false hope and it's going to get lost. So make sure it's connected. So we're going to use the link type of dev issue, and it's custom charts. I'm just going to have to grab this for 1 second because I need to trying to remember everything, trying to pull up the number. Okay, so 34. Let me just share my screen again. Cool. So I know that this is custom charts 34. we enter that. Brilliant. So there you go. You can see you've got all the features now, and we're going to click. Yep, you can click create. Brilliant. So there you go. I'm going to move it up the board a little bit because I know that this is actually going to get done fairly soon. It's probably going to get done around there. So let's go back to let's jump into an incognito window now, because I want to show you what this looks like for someone that isn't an agent, isn't logged in. So now this is anyone on the internet, any customer, anyone that's interested in custom charts can now see something's just been added. They've got improved onboarding for new users has been added to the backlog. And this is now visible, and you'll see the image that I added for this. This is just at the moment creating a public ticket, but I want to show you how we're going to tie it all together as well, and we can link it to the support ticket, and then have we could, if we wanted to, in the end, close the loop, and you can see that that's the image of what we've designed, what it's going to look like, some basic onboarding for users. So now that's public, people can see that, they can see that it's in the backlog, and if when we do move it to in progress, they'll be able to see that change. Brilliant. So let's tie it all back together then. So we know this public ticket has been created, and we can see that here. So we can tie it all together as well if we wanted to tie this to the support ticket. So we know that the support ticket created was 324. So we're going to say that this relates to sub 324. There you go. So now this is linked there. And what's nice about Jira and the way all the permissions work is that we can see, when I'm logged in as an agent, I can see the links, but when you're logged in publicly, you can't see any of those links to private issues. So all the security is built into it. You don't have to worry about that as long as it's set up correctly. There you go. And then we can also go on to and do 324 again on the original on the support ticket. We can tie this back to we can tie this back to the development ticket as well. Cool. And there you go. You can see it's all tied together now. And what this means is that when the developers are working on it, they can see exactly what support tickets it came from. When the sales team are working on it, they can see what public tickets and what to recommend to their customers, and it's all linked together in a single Jira instance. So that's how it works really nicely together.
And just checking, right? So then both the customer who requested it and the salesperson who's the account manager will have visibility on any changes to that ticket, right? And we'll get updates.
Yeah, so now I'm going to give you, so this has gone through, and we'll say, public. There you go. So now replying to Chris can now see that as a public ticket, and he can see it's on the backlog, and he can follow it on this support ticket, so we can close it and say it's done. We can ask for feedback. Also, it's public, so now if anyone else has the same question, we can point them to that first, and everyone can follow the same process. So this is just a simple way to do it without getting overly complicated. All I've got is a board, a tracker board in its public project. And unfortunately, because of the way the licensing works, you can't have external anonymous users viewing agile boards like this. So I made it a bit more user-friendly by creating adding these Confluence macros in to show the issues like this. But it ties it all together in documentation, makes it really simple. So there you go. That's a full run through of the use case from when it's on the dashboard. As you can see here, you can click through, see it, and that's still in triage from Chris' ticket, but we can go through it like that. Okay. Any questions about that, Chris? Anything else you want me to mention?
I'll just say briefly that I've seen this done very advanced. So some companies are even using Jira and integrating it with a CRM or using it as a CRM, and there are a few cool add-ons for that. And what that means is then that the sales team can actually start tracking their target accounts. And also another thing I've seen, which is quite cool, is you can have like automation set up. So for the example here, where someone said they were a 10,000 user, maybe sales would want to be automatically pinged anytime a large user expressed interest in the company and our add-on. So there's all sorts that are possible, but I think the great thing about this is that it's simple, it's easy to set up, it works well, whether you're using Slack or something else. There are already a lot of pre-built automations which are quite nice, and it just keeps communication visible for you, the support team, the customer, and the devs all in one place.
Brilliant. Yeah, definitely. So that's a quick example to go through of how it works for our team. Like I said, we've got this distributed team, so the developers, we can mention them on internal comments. We can have it linked to their ticket. This is only the start of what you can do with automation. So a lot of that I just showed you was manual, where I was creating the public ticket manually, but you could create automation rules that when you click a button, or maybe just automatically creates a public ticket for certain things like bugs. You can integrate it however you want. This is just the first step, and I find it great for our small size team because it gives you a lot of control as well. And a lot of the times when people are starting processes like this, they end up spending days or weeks planning it all out, how to get started, how to make the workflow as difficult as possible so no one cheats. And that's all fine if you have the time and the inclination, but if you just want to get started right away, then these are some really small things you can do to just open up and have that visibility today.
Could you talk us through, are there any simple automations, such like automation for Jira, you could share that would be useful for teams doing this?
Some more of the automations now. So I'll jump back to the list that I've got. Let me just pull this up a sec. Okay, so let me just pull this up. So yeah, there you go. So here are some of the automations that I have set up. They're not all turned on at the moment, but let me show you an example. So you can have auto closing, which can save you a bit of time. And this is an example that if a status is waiting for customer and it hasn't been updated for 5 days, I've got a reminder sent flag. So this was a 2-step process where it would send the first reminder, then a second, and it would say, hey, we haven't heard back from you for 10 days, so we're going to close this ticket. And this is something that works really well with automation with Jira because it's really visible and you can tie everything together, link it all together. But it's not something I've got turned on at the moment, mainly because 10 days is a little bit short. So sometimes it'll be waiting for customer and it'll just close the ticket. And at the moment we're doing a bit more high touch and I don't have the volume, but we can always turn this on if we do have much high volume of tickets, and this can help to automate some of that. Okay, these are some little flags. This is more for reporting. So I added a dev required flag. So if a support ticket comes in, if it ever goes through into in development, we can tie it together for end reports. And what this is really useful for is when you want to see, okay, what supports were handled at effectively first line support, what tickets just went from triage to closed, what went from, with the support team to closed. And this gives you some metrics you can actually use to measure how many tickets are going through to development and how that's being used. So yeah, that's another one. And as you saw, the Slack alerts are part of a bunch of these. And there's just some incremental reopen counters, again, used for reporting. So you can see every time it goes from closed to triage, it increments the counter. I think you can see here, it just increments the counter. And this is just a small maths function you can do with automation for Jira. And again, it's not something we're using right now, but I built it anyway, just so that if we did say, how long has this ticket been going on for? It's been reopened 10 times. You could have a chart showing a breakdown of tickets reopened and see what tickets are being reopened 10 times and what's going on there. So it gives you some good visibility just using these really simple automation rules that run in the background. And yeah, really help improve the process when you've got limited team members.
Thanks, Tom. Awesome. I think the key takeaway here, looking at all this, is that a lot of teams aren't used to having an optimum automated, very visible process, especially between teams, right? And that was fine when you were all in the same building. You could quickly call a meeting. That papers over a lot of the cracks that were missing in terms of visibility. But hopefully this shows that with the right process, the right tools, and the right automations in the right place, it just makes it a lot easier for everyone to be on the same page without the need for that regular communication, which hopefully saves everyone a lot of time and avoids a lot of context switching.
And we've made it sound like we're, Old Street, we're a bunch of introverts that just hate being around people and love staying on our own. But this is just it's just the situation we found ourselves in even before the global lockdowns. So it's something that we've been working with for a while with these distributed teams, and but we do hope for a time when we can all get together again.
Sure, looking forward to it. Thanks, Tom. So, looking at that, does anyone have any questions, any automations they'd be interested in to kick us off?
What's your thoughts on chatbots?
I've seen them used very well. I've seen them used very poorly. It's a good question. I think the best chatbots are the ones that seamlessly link you to a person. So they're handling, the very easy questions, right? Oh my God, yes, Beard just distracted me there. So yeah, I've seen very good chatbots where they ask, the right sort of questions to filter and put people through to the right department. And so you don't have to pay a person to do that. Yeah, use well, they're brilliant. Use poorly, they're terrible. Have you looked, I'll ask you, Rafa, have you had a chance to play with Help much? Have you had a look at it?
No, I haven't actually.
So that's a very interesting one, right? Recently acquired by Atlassian. I think it's part of their tools for every team push. And the UX was very easy on it. You can literally use emojis to automate actions from within tickets from within Slack. So that looks cool.
Check it out.
But
I never used it successfully in low volume, high complexity issues. So if you're kind of like a call center-y type, very repetitive issues, I think you have a good chance, or like Chris said, just to kind of divert it. But whenever you go into something which is more than the most trivial stuff, I couldn't get any of the stuff working.
Anything other than have you turned it off and turned it on again and just stalling while they're in the queue.
Any useful thing that you ask the bot, you get a reply. I don't know. How about those 3 keywords? So
I think. Sorry, Rafa, you go for it.
I was saying there's also the other thing, which is actually just opening a chat with a support person. And
yes, that was
back and forth, just actually chatting. I personally find that extremely useful. For example, with Amazon and stuff, right? You have a problem, you just chat with someone and job done. Right?
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say next. Is that's the middle step is live chat, and then the chatbot is to augment that. The difficulty is just scale. So it only works if you have instant replies. If you've got people, if you wait 2 minutes in the queue, you feel like that's a long time. But if you don't have 1,000 support agents like Amazon sat around ready to reply, live chat that isn't live is more frustrating than sending an email and waiting. So it's getting the balance right. And that's why while Jira Service Desk doesn't give you that instant reply feature, it's not actually always the right use case. So I think it is a good balance at the moment.
Fair enough.
Yeah, it's a good question though. Interesting to see like how you can augment it. There are support tickets, like for example, other ways to raise support tickets. So there are like issue collectors and various places you can put buttons so people can just say, oh, I need help, and they can click a button and just start filling in tickets. So there are ways to make it easier for them to actually send you the data. But in terms of replying, a lot of it is about managing expectations. And this is something that I've seen done well, is using automation to do exactly that. So rather than using an automated chatbot to say, hey, how can I help you? You can reply, just add an automation rule to reply straight away and say, oh, sorry, our support hours are only 9 to 5 UK time, and you've asked, and it's 1 in the morning right now. So even that will just let them know, oh, so I shouldn't expect to reply for 8 hours. And just that level of interaction, even though it's fairly static, it can make a big difference.
Sure.
Spartez makes some add-ons which are quite clever at integrating what's typed in that service desk chat and making sure it goes to the ticket and it's easy enough to pin to the appropriate ticket. So I'd recommend you look into that. Tom, have you had a chance to look at Help at all? Is it something you're excited about?
I think it's interesting from an Atlassian perspective of kind of branching out into making things easier to get data into their core tools. So it's all about an ecosystem with Atlassian. And what I quite enjoyed reading was their section. They did a section to vendors saying, how does this impact you? What if you also have a tool that's a bit like Help, and what does this mean for the ecosystem? And the Atlassian answer was fairly simple. It was like, we've acquired Help and we think it's great, but if you have add-ons on the marketplace, or if you're using a different one right now, we're not going to steamroller you or stop you selling. The whole point is competition and a bit of Darwinism, so the best person should win. So just because they are bigger, they're not trying to stamp out any competition. So I'd see it as promising. They are looking to improve in the area, but if you also have a great idea for your own chat or Help app, it's not the end of the world. You can still make a good dent in the ecosystem.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. One thing I was asked in the lead up to this was what reports are useful for support teams, right? Particularly in terms of like dashboards and stuff. So I know we saw a bit of a screenshot during the demo, but what are your thoughts on that? What are good reporting dashboards for service teams to be looking at?
Yeah, so this is something that I mentioned at the start with queues, and queues are okay for ordering data. They give you in service tests, you can have sets of queues of the status or maybe what agent it's for, but it's not very visual. You can't really see anything. So reports are nice because they're graphical. You can have your colors, and people respond well to colors. So if you as you saw there, that light blue now is in my dreams and my nightmares sometimes. That's the color of triage for me. So when I see it on the side of the screen, or when I look at it, I just know straight away that there are some tickets that need to be looked at. So having colors and useful information on the dashboard. And also it's making clear who the data is for. So an agent in a particular team needs to see something very different to the high-level manager's support overview. So understanding that you don't need one page for everything, and breaking it down into smaller chunks and saying, cool, so I just need to look at what tickets are for maybe this app or for this team. And giving people the right visibility is definitely worth doing, because the team will lose so much time looking for tickets, and customers will get frustrated when tickets get lost.
Awesome. Any other questions, guys?
Yeah, quick question from me, guys. So first of all, great intro, really appreciate it. And as someone who never used anything Atlassian for serving customers, I always bump into other systems. It's really interesting to understand how it works. Your experience into how those solutions would scale in terms of agents, product complexity. So what's your experience with scaling it?
Yeah, so that's something that I have a lot of experience in. That is my day job is as an Atlassian consultant. So what I've shown here is a good fit use case for a small team. And it works very well when it's quite manual and can be automated. What I've seen is that as the teams grow larger is that anything that's hidden, so any automations or anything that's not immediately visible to the person using it, can cause chaos. So you've got the one end where you can make it completely manual, but at least everyone knows what's going on, or you make it completely automated and there's no gaps in the system. And that's very hard to do. So most cases at scale I see is that people have some level of automation and some restrictions, but it means everyone gets into a mess, because most of the time your support agents will be asking your admins, it's in this status and I can't move it out, what's wrong? And the answer is, oh, because you haven't filled in this one field on this one page. And that's actually making the process work against the users. So it can be difficult to scale if you do it in that way. So it's kind of managing it. And like I said, some of those rules that I have, the automation, some of them are just turned off. You don't need to over automate. And it's nice to have that ability to turn things on and off, not just have it on and stay on.
Okay. Cool, thanks.
But Jira done properly. So I didn't go into the permissions of how it works with, say, agent licenses and developer licenses. But the way we have it set up is it's structured so that only agents need to reply to support tickets, but when it's linked to the development tasks and those those developers only have Jira software licenses, it means that people still get full visibility. It's the Atlassian design. It's how they built the software to be. And it does save you a lot of money because you need a limited number of agents, but everyone can see what's going on. And particularly making use of that public tracker. Again, that's using anonymous projects and linking and all the permissions properly. So that part of it would scale. And that's why it does work on a large system like that.
Yeah, and that is actually a very cool part where I always struggled with many of the traditional systems into giving that transparent external view. Very good to have all the information nice and tidy inside, but what you expose and how you expose it externally, that looks like a really neat solution.
So this is a solution I've come up with. So Jira, the data can be visible, the tickets can be publicly visible. I'd say that the solution I've come up with on the Confluence page is not perfect, but because effectively the API, the data is public, you could funnel that into a Trello board. You could link it to Trello and have it much more visual with some pictures on the cards if you want it to be more visual. You could put it onto a different website and actually have it auto update, so you can pipe it into your own tool, but all the permissions, the control, the administration is still centralized in Jira, and that's why I really like it.
I'll just say from a sales perspective as well, we like it because we don't do a lot of day-to-day work in Jira, but we do use Confluence, and Confluence is very easy to share with customers. And it just saves, the devs are busy and sales are having a lot of conversations, and we're not completely stupid. We can understand, we can see a roadmap. And when we talk to a customer, we know, oh, that relates to that. So it means we can self-serve a lot without having to bother busy technical people with questions that they've already answered 4 times. And so just that having that is very simple and very easy to share is a massive boon for us. It means we can self-serve without feeling the need to bother the devs too much in Slack, which is helpful for everyone.
Definitely, we appreciate that too. Cool. So yeah, that was a quick run through. Hopefully you found it useful to see the live demo side. If you do have any specific questions about anything you saw today, particularly around automation for Jira, because that is a bit of a rabbit hole once you start looking at some of the rules I created. If you have any questions, automation for Jira has great documentation. So I'd definitely get started with that. And also custom charts, you saw them on the dashboard itself, and it looks pretty, and that's why I like it. But it's also really easy to use. So if you do want to have a play around with that, we do have a demo playground, so you can jump onto that. And without having to install it, just go onto our website and start clicking around and building some charts for yourself if you want your dashboards to look just as good. Okay, and Chris has sent you the link there in the chat for anyone that wants it.
Make charts pretty again. Brilliant. Thank you very much, guys. If anyone has any questions about support, distributed teams, working together, automating it, or how to make pretty reports for dashboards and for sharing, feel free to reach out if you're shy to do so here. You should be in touch with all of us on LinkedIn.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Bye-bye.